Hello and welcome to Tablets and Smartphones, a lesson provided by the McCracken County Public Library. My name is Emily Steele and I'm the Adult and Digital Services Librarian. These are some of the types of devices that we'll be talking about. Two of the most common are the Google Android devices and Apple, which is iPhone and iPad. And if you don't know which kind you have, we're going to get to something later in settings where you can find that out. Microsoft has some devices that you might be looking at for this class, and Amazon Fire has a tablet. The Jitterbug is a phone that's not really, I think, a smartphone, but they have texting and they have some other capabilities, so you may have one of those. I doubt that you will have anything that's not on this list. There are some differences in how things work. I'm going to be focusing on Android and the Apple products. There are some things that work on one way on Android, another way on Apple. So it's a little bit tricky to teach this. But if there is something that you can't figure out after this class, this may help you put together a question that you can put on Google or YouTube to find an answer, or you can always come to the library and bring your device to the information desk and we can probably help you figure it out. You may want to pause the video while we're going over things and get out your device and actually try it. That's the benefit of having this as a virtual lesson instead of in person. So the first thing we're going to talk about is getting around. You have probably already seen people tapping on their screens and you probably already know how to do that. It's the same thing as a mouse click. So instead of moving a mouse to an icon on a computer and clicking it, you just tap the screen there with your finger. You may not know about the long hold. Some people call this different things, but basically instead of tapping the icon, you put your finger on it and hold it still. Now on an iPhone or iPad, that's going to make all of the little icons wiggle so that you know you can move them around. But on an Android device, it's like a right click on a mouse and you'll get some other options. So that is something to try out on your device to see how it acts. And you probably already know about swiping left to right. You can get from one screen to another doing that. Also, sometimes on a screen, there will be information that goes off on this side and you can put your finger on the words and pull it so that you can see the rest of it. And swiping from the top or the bottom of the screen will give you different things. Usually, if you go to the very top of the screen and swipe down, you'll be able to see notifications. So try that and also try to swipe up from the very bottom of the screen and see if anything comes up with that.
Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of things I've been talking about with this navigation, and one is the tap. So when you tap, you do it really fast. You just like barely touch it. So this is the Safari app. This is your browser. We're going to open that by tapping it. And then you may have a button like this in the middle. That's your home button. And then when you do a long tap, you put your finger on it, you just hold it there, and now I've got some more options that have come up. So I'm going to tap off that to make it go away. And now I'm going to hold it down even longer. And in an Apple, that makes the app wiggle happen. Now I've got Android as well, so we're going to look at that. So when you hold this down, you sometimes get options and sometimes you just get, it's telling me I can remove it. If I wanted to, I'd drag it up there, but I don't want to do that. It does not do the app wiggle, and in this one, it's not giving me any options, so I think it's just this type of tablet. To swipe, you just put your finger lightly on it and then drag it. Okay, this is showing me how I can change the wallpaper as well, but I held my finger there for too long. But that's all you have to do to swipe. And it's a good idea to try swiping up from the very bottom and from the very side. Okay, on this one, that's bringing up this Google. So I'm going to go home because I don't want that right now. If you swipe from the very top, you'll see some notifications up there. And that will look different on some different machines, but it's basically the same. And then on this one, I'm going to go from the very top. There's the notifications page. If you go from the side on this kind of Apple, you will get this Today view, I think is what they call it. Then at the very bottom, you can edit that. And Apple won't always be the same. You may have some different options, but if you swipe, you can see all of your screens. These two dots down here, that will show you which screen you're on. If you have several screens, that can be useful. So that's what it means when I talk about tapping and the long hold and swiping.
The three main things we're going to talk about in this class are apps and settings and screens. And we're going to talk about apps first. But while we're looking at this icon of the little gear wheel, this is usually what you'll look for settings. It looks a little different on different devices. In this picture of a screen, there's a different one there, but you can tell what it is. So that's what you'll be looking for later on when we do settings. But first, we're going to talk about all the apps in general. So apps are something that some people feel a little bit nervous about when they first get a smartphone or a tablet. What are the apps and where do they come from? But this is actually something that you have probably already worked with. Apps is just short for applications, and many of the apps that you'll have are things that you could just go through a browser to use on the internet. You have probably opened up the internet and looked at the weather, maybe looked up a map, maybe you have email. Any of these things, instead of going through the browser, you can get an app that will go directly to those. They just do one thing. McLib actually has an app. There's a McLib library app. So if you don't already have that one, you might want to get that. Many important phone or tablet functions are apps. The phone on your phone, the little phone dialer, that is an app. The camera is an app. The settings is an app. Some desktop computers are going to apps. So you may have already used an app on your own computer. For example, if there is a Facebook icon on the computer that you open to go just to Facebook and it doesn't do anything else, that's the Facebook app. And there are many others. It depends on what version you're running. So it's very likely that you have already been using apps and maybe you didn't even know it. Your phone should have an app store already on your device when you get it. If you have an Android phone, it's called the Play Store. So you can look for that if you don't see App Store. You can get the apps from that, and also you can probably get music and movies and even ebooks and many more things that way. Some of the apps may be unavailable for your device, and that depends on the age and the memory. If your device is more than a few years old, there may be apps that just won't work on it anymore. Even if everything else works and you have enough memory, it just sometimes won't happen. And you can check your memory in settings, and we're going to get to that later. You may have to log into the App Store when you get there. If you have an Android device, it's your Google account. If you have an Apple device, it's your Apple ID. If you have a Kindle Fire, it's going to be your Amazon ID. It may ask for payment information, especially if this is the first time you're logging in. Many apps are free, so you may never need this. So if that comes up, see if there's a skip option on there anywhere. It might be in small print. If you do have to put it in, it won't charge you anything without telling you how much it costs. Lots of apps are free. I probably shouldn't say most of the big ones, but all the library apps are free, and things like Facebook and Instagram and email, those are going to be free. Once you're in the App Store and you're looking around at different apps, like if you're looking at productivity apps, or maybe you are looking for a different kind of a camera app, there are different things that provides that can help you make a decision. That usually has ratings and reviews can tell you about recent complaints. If there have been some similar complaints going on for a few months and the company hasn't been responding to them, that could be a red flag. The ratings are really helpful. Usually it's something out of a 4 or 5 star rating. It will tell you who made the app. The name of the company should be on there somewhere, and you can look them up online. and how many downloads comes up. So if something has been downloaded 10 million times, it's probably safe, because if something's wrong with it, it's going to come up. I use Android, and I know that in the Android Play Store, there are editor's choice where the people who run the store will have recommendations. So that's something that I look for, and I imagine that the other app stores have something similar. When a company like Google or Apple is running an app store, they vet the apps. They don't let everyone in the world who wants to develop an app put it out there. So if they find out that there's something wrong with it, they'll pull it out of the store. So what you get there should be safe. You'll have some apps that are pre-installed that you can't remove, and there's different reasons for that. I usually tell people that if you don't know what something is, probably leave it alone. Whenever I get a new phone or a tablet, I start looking things up. I Google it before I delete it, just in case. Also, I have an Android device, so if I don't know what something is, but it says Android, I leave it alone. And so there'll be some things like even just a game or a little new service that you don't want and you can't take it out. But we'll talk about that more when we get to settings. Okay, the next part of the class is we're going to get more into settings. These have a lot of different options of how you can personalize your device. You can adjust things like the display brightness, the volume, and you can check the machine's available memory there. Settings on a device are pretty similar to settings on the computer. Some other important things, if your phone isn't getting internet, you can check the network connections there. If you go to a new place, like going to the library, you can look for open Wi-Fi there. You can adjust notifications. If you're getting a lot more notifications than you want, you can get into notifications here and you can start making some changes to how they come up. Another way to do that is, in a minute, we're going to talk about how to look at your apps and settings. If you have a lock screen on your phone, or if you'd like to have one, that is when you turn on your phone, you have to put in a code or swipe it pattern so it'll let you in. You can make adjustments to that in your settings. And two big ones are account information and device information. Sometimes people aren't really sure if they have an Android device or an Apple device or something else. So if you don't know, you can find that out in your settings. If you have an Android device, it will have information about your Google account. If you have an Apple device, it'll have information about your Apple account. And any other device should have something similar. On a phone, in your phone information, it will tell you the model of the phone that you have, and it will tell you your own phone number. So that's a good one to know when you have something new. If you have a new number, it can be really hard to keep straight for a few weeks. So you can find that out there. On a tablet, it won't say phone information, but it should tell you device information. It may call it something else, but it will tell you the exact model that you have. So if you want to look something up online to try to find an answer, it's a good idea to know exactly what you have, because if you just put in an iPad and you don't know which number it is, you may get information that works for the newest iPads, but maybe you have one that's like the last model. You'll need to have the model information. And with Android, there are different manufacturers that are making these devices, and there are differences from one model to another. So it's really important to know which kind you have. So it would be a good idea actually now, if you haven't looked at this before, to pause the video, get into your settings, and find the account information and the phone or device information and see what it tells you there, because sometimes people aren't really sure what email account they are signed in on or what kind of phone they have. You can find all that out there. Somewhere in your settings, there should be a list of all of your apps, and you can do a lot when you get there. You can tap on an individual app and you can get into its settings for notifications. So if there is an app that you really never need it to buzz your phone at you, you can just tell it no notifications, or you can tell it that it can show you notification, but you don't want to ring a tone at you. There's a lot that you can do there. Whenever I get a new device, one of the first things I do is I get into this part of the settings and I go through and I start shutting down notifications because I don't want most of it. You can usually review permissions here. Sometimes an app will ask you to access your location or your contacts or your camera. And if you want to go in and check that, you can do that here. It's usually not a big deal. Sometimes I turn off location and then end up turning it back on later. So you can go in and change your mind here. And if you can uninstall the app, this is how you'll do it. Go to your notifications and you'll find the app and it will tell you whether or not you can take it out. Sometimes instead of uninstalling, it will just say disable. So if you can't take it out, you can disable it and that will stop it from running updates and giving notifications and things like that. Some of the apps are necessary to keep your device running. So if you don't know what it is, you can look it up and maybe it's something like a traffic app that you don't need. But if you don't know, don't delete it. There's a lot you can do with your screens to move apps around or change the appearance, and you can customize it to make it more fun or useful for you to use. Changing things around on your screens works differently on different devices, and it can be a little bit tricky to try to think of all the different ways you can do this, but I'm going to cover some of it, and it may, if your phone doesn't work the same way with what we're talking about, it may give you enough of an idea of what you can work with. So one thing you can do is change the wallpaper. So when your phone comes up, there's usually some kind of a picture or just a color background, and you can change that to a lot of different things. And on the next screen, we're going to talk more about wallpaper or widgets, but widgets are, it's like an app, but instead of a little icon, it's a window that shows you up-to-date information like the time or your latest emails. Another thing to think about with screens is that your phone or tablet will have a home screen. You may have a round button somewhere on the front of your device that's the home button that will zap it back to that screen. You may want to put your most used apps there. People do different things. Sometimes on their home screen, they don't have much at all. Sometimes people put apps in like alphabetical order or they arrange them by color. There's all kinds of different things you can do. And you may have more than one screen on your device that you use. On my phone, I have 3 screens and some people have several. To get from one screen to the other, all you have to do is just put your finger on it and just swipe and it will go to the next one. So getting more into wallpaper and widgets on an Android, you probably do this just by touching the screen in between apps so that you're not touching the app, just touching the background, and you hold it and a little window with some options should pop up. If you have an Apple device, you can find wallpaper in your settings and change it there. And for widgets, that will come up when you put your finger on a screen and hold it down so that all the apps wiggle. A plus sign should be at the top of the screen to let you add a widget. So you can do that and just see what widgets are available. There may not be one that you want, but some people like to put something like a clock face on the front of their device so they can see easily what time it is. And you'll probably have several options. If your device is different, you can take that device information that you found in the settings section and search that with the word wallpaper or widgets and see if there are some different instructions for you. You may want to move apps around to put similar ones together. I have all of my library apps together on my phone. So Libby and Hoopla and the McLib app are all together. On my tablet, I have all of the apps that I use for work on the same screen, so I can get to any of it really easily. So that's just some things to think about. People have lots of different ways they organize it. You can move things around as much as you want. You need to remember, if you take an icon off your screen, that may not delete the app from your device. So if you're wanting to delete the app, you'll have to look and see if it just says remove or if it says uninstall. You may have the option of installing an app directly from the screen without going to settings, but that varies from device to device. You may want to move the apps that you don't use often to screens farther away from your home screen. And you would do that by putting a finger on the app and then swiping while you're still holding it down. And the Apple screens will make all the apps wiggle. If you're not seeing that, don't worry about it. It just means you don't have an Apple phone. You'll just keep swiping with your finger on the app until you get where you want to be, and then you just let it go. So adding icons to the screens usually happens automatically when you download a new app. It will usually put an icon on the last screen that you have, and then you can move it to whatever screen you want. You may have something downloaded that doesn't have an icon on your screen, so you can usually look at all the apps you have downloaded. Some ways of doing that are to swipe up from the very bottom, or there may be an icon that's a dot grid. On an iPhone, you can get to an app library by swiping left from the home screen. But if you can get an app list and you see something that you have on your phone but you don't have an icon for, you should just be able to put your finger on that icon and hold it, and then it should let you move it to your screens. So this should be enough for you to get started using your device, and you'll get used to swapping around on it a lot sooner than you think. Some devices will have a sort of a shortcut so that if you move your hand in a certain way, it thinks that you want to shut down an app or go to your home screen. Those are called gestures, and it can just take a little while to learn them all, but if you're patient, you'll get there. And you can always get more help at the computer labs at the library. We have the information desk downstairs, and there's a lab upstairs. We also have an online class about our digital library apps. I mentioned Libby and Hoopla. So if you are interested in those, you can look for that class on YouTube, and you can get all those downloaded. And then you can read free ebooks or listen to audiobooks on your phone with the library apps. This class was a little tricky to do because, as I keep saying, things work differently on different devices. So if this doesn't help you and you have more questions, please let us know at the library, and maybe we can update this class or at least figure it out for you. Thanks for watching.